Okay. And we are live for the Personnel Committee meeting of February 15th. And we have everyone here: Don Walsh, Peter Talbot, Chairman Sylvia Nichols, Town Manager Sean Kimball, Assistant Town Manager Arnett Talbot. If you would put the flag up, I will say the pledge for everyone so that we don't make a mess of the voice. So, do we have a flag? Are we going to do that? Is it ready?
I don't have a flag
I
ready.
think
Okay.
we, oh, here, you know what? I will shine my camera.
Here we go.
Flag.
There you
There's a
go.
flag in the corner.
Okay, all right, there's your flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you. All right. So we have one item that we need to address immediately. Happily, the town council approved a new blight ordinance at our last meeting, and now we need to talk about the job description for the blight ordinance enforcement officer. You should have had an email from Sean, which delineated that job description. Did you get one? All of you, Don and Peter. Have you had a chance to look at it?
Yes.
Yeah, everybody's looked at it.
Yes, I did. Yes.
Right, okay. I have a couple of questions, but I'll start and ask you first any comments that you want to make, or do you wish to make any plea for this, Sean, before we start?
Let me just do a brief overview if that's okay.
Okay,
And everyone has a copy in front of them, right? You don't want me to share on the screen.
Yeah, I have it open. If you need it on the screen, just let me know. I'll pop it up there.
I guess go ahead and maybe put it up.
probably if you have it up.
Yeah,
then put it up.
it's
Yeah.
easier.
For all that, and plus for all the viewers at home, I'm sure
Yeah.
there's hundreds. All right, here we go. So, this is the same. So I guess first and foremost, I think important point. This is not envisioned as a full-time position. We're fortunate not to have that much blight in town that I think we would need a full-time position for this. And so similar to our prior unsafe premises officer position, this is really largely modeled off the same format. So the intent here is that this is added on to another employee's existing duties and workload. And so it's a job description, though, because the ordinance says that it's me or my designee. This gives us the most flexibility to appoint somebody to that position. And as you know, with blight, it can be a variety of departments. Frankly, it's not uncommon to see, anything from a fire marshal's office to zoning enforcement office to the planning office to even a police department might have a blight enforcement officer. So because it touches all so many different departments, there's a lot of different candidates that could be, if they had the right skill set and demeanor and approach, they could be a good choice for the blight prevention officer. So really, again, it's modeled off the prior job description that we had for the unsafe premises ordinance. And again, I think I do have some thoughts as to where this is going to land. And this will kind of segue eventually into additional discussions we have about reorganizations in the planning department. But as the council's aware, we have currently a new planner who has worked with a blight ordinance himself for a number of years, was in charge of enforcing blight for a number of years. And I think within that department, specifically with the position currently as a ZEO, there's a position there that I think is going to be a good fit for enforcing and have the bandwidth to really handle the workload there. So that's probably where this is going to go. But again, the first step is we need a job description. And then again, I'm sure it'll be a question too. I think what we did before the council, I guess now 2 or 3 years ago, when the unsafe premises officer position was contemplated, it was envisioned at the time that there would be a stipend with that because it is an add-on to their existing position. I would assume that this a similar model. We don't have to decide that tonight, but I think that would be what I would recommend. Similar in scale, frankly, to the prior arrangement we had with respect to a stipend for this position. I think it's currently $3,000 a year. So that's what I think the vision would be, and that's something we'll probably talk about a little bit in the budget to make sure we've appropriated for it. But I'm sure that's a question that somebody will probably have. And maybe we
Thank you.
can share if you want or not, unless there's any points that you wanted me to highlight in there.
Well, I'm happy with that, Don. Peter, you're happy with that? If you've been
Yes.
able to review that enough. Thank you for that. You answered several of my questions. So this would be a one-person position, and the referrals will all come, just so that the public understands, the referrals can come from any number of places within the town. As you said, police or human services or senior center or wherever they come from, the fire department. But this enforcement officer would be a single officer who would be in charge of any blight issue that was brought to enforcement. That's correct? And my feeling initially is exactly as you described, that this suits the planning department as the place for that person to be involved. And we are, as a group here, deciding how that planning office is going to settle out. So we would not be designating today a specific person within the planning department, but only the ability for you as the town manager to designate one of those employees to this position. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yep.
Okay. So Peter and Don, any questions?
I have a question. So you're envisioning that somebody who's already a full-time employee, possibly in the planning department, will take this on. This will be basically done during their regular working hours? Because my concern is now, how will it affect the work that they normally do? And I envision maybe the first 6 months of this, they could be pretty busy because, all of a sudden people start seeing it. I just get concerned, are you going to limit them to how many hours a week they can work on this part of it? Or is it, how does that work?
No, I don't think, well, first of all, we have a little bit of practice because we've had a couple of years of the fire marshal serving as a unsafe premises officer. So there still have been cases we've tried to, push through under that existing ordinance. And remember, it's important to note that ordinance still exists. It doesn't sunset until September. So sort of temporarily here, we have both in parallel. Obviously, the most, the actions we anticipate the town being able to take will be under the blight ordinance, the ones that we've been probably talking about the longest. But I do think, I think in that respect too, I think it's important to note, while it's currently been under the fire marshal's purview, at times that takes away from, and they're busy with fire marshal duties and other things too. So, the point is well taken. I will say, I think we have an opportunity here in the planning department. We currently have a part-time CEO who is now kind of expressing interest in working more full-time also. So there might be some capacity in terms of hours. That's going to be, again, part of a conversation with respect to how we staff the planning department going forward. And again, our new town planner has a lot of ideas of that, and he's worked with successfully with a little bit of a leaner staff over the years. So I think there are opportunities there to build this within the workload that's already been established in the department. And again, I also really want to just reiterate Mike Glidden's experience already with enforcing blight is a really big advantage, I think, when it comes to managing the workload and not having to kind of learn all of this from scratch. And what do you do in this situation? He's kind of been down the road a number of times with some properties in his prior town. And so I think that's just going to lend some efficiencies that I don't see this being. Yes, we know the first few months, I completely agree. They're going to be busy with the properties we all know and love. But at the end of the day, a lot of that, yes, there's some initial work, there's some paperwork that needs to be put in order. There's some communications with the town attorney that need to be verified. But it's enough that somebody could mix it in, especially if they're in an exempt position where they're not working overtime. We all stay and work until the work is done, and this is just added to it. And that's why I think a stipend of $3,000, as we did with the unsafe premises ordinance, is appropriate because it does kind of compensate for, hey, you might have to stay another hour a day here and there, and you kind of feel like your time is worth it.
Or, I mean, so it is going to be an exempt employee. So, I mean, it could even be a Saturday or Sunday that they get called in to look at something that if it's, really that bad.
Yep.
And so I guess going forward, besides the town officials who will be notifying this blight officer of the conditions, I'm assuming that there'll be people from the public who will be addressing it with different public officials. So I guess that's how it's going to have to work going forward, where, I mean, perhaps if it is the planning department, then that's where we will, direct the public to go to the planning department, eventually the officer who we have in place there. Is that what you're foreseeing?
Yeah, I would say that this person, whoever's occupying this position, this job description, and again, as we were talking, in this case, it'd be the planning department. Then they would be the primary contact, the phone number, the email address that's listed. And as you said, if anything comes through other departments, as we talked about during the public hearing process and during the town council meeting, then those folks that are notified, however the notification comes, they just simply forward it to that person and the process starts. And again, I mean, we have a handful of other positions, not very many, but similar. I mean, obviously our fire chief also serves as our emergency management director. That's another job description and it's technically another position, but he's able to do both. So when we have emergency management type situations, it's a natural fit. But it's, they're sort of wearing two hats at the same time. So it's perfectly appropriate to say, XYZ employee is our blight enforcement officer. They also happen to be our assistant town planner, or they happen to be our CEO. They happen to be whatever the position title is that they are sort of most known for. This is their secondary one, and it may be their most visible one for the next 6 months to a year.
Okay. Thanks.
I'd answer that. Peter?
I'm good.
You're good. Okay. So the process here, Sean, is that we are forwarding this job description and approving or supporting this job description to be put forward to the town council for their approval. Is that the correct path that this is following?
Yep, that's our traditional path. And again, just I know we kind of pulled this together relatively quickly, but it's in part because the ordinance goes into effect March 1st. I'd like to have somebody on and appointed and designated by that time, or soon thereafter if the council doesn't have a meeting next week. But either way, the sooner the better. So that's the intent.
Yeah, and I think that's important, especially the rollout of this blight ordinance. I'm sure, as John said, I suspect that we will have more than one suggestion of places that we might consider. So we want to make sure that the transition to that process is as smooth as possible and be ready for that. So I concur. So I would look for a motion from either one of you to bring this to the council.
I'll make a motion that we present this job description to the council as written.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor? That was very easy. If all of our problems were that easy, that would be great. Thank you. But thank you for the explanation, and I'm excited to see that this is now rolling out, and hopefully we will manage it well and be productive in at least addressing the most egregious blight that we see in town. So, and we will work together. So we will forward that to the council. And now I would like to ask that we move into an executive conversation, as we at the Personnel Committee have some conversations that are regarding private personnel issues. So I need a motion, I guess, to go into an executive session with Peter, Don, Sylvia, and Sean Kimball.
Make a motion to go into executive session.
Are we including Arnett and Noel?
We are not.
No.
Okay. Then I will second.
And we're all in favor? Aye. Okay. Thank you, Arnett. Thank you, Noel. We're just, we will, when we're
Thank
finished.
you,
Marilyn.
all. Enjoy
And
your
Marilyn,
evening.
right.
Sean, I made you host. We're all good.
Good.
It says we're still live on YouTube. Do I have to turn that off, or does it still?